Brandon, this guy does all our babbit work.
Okay, what's the material? The actual composition?
This is tin and lead that is mixed, and what happens is we do this thing called fluxing. So what happened with this? This is for a Cord 812.
Yep.
It's an old 1937 V8 flathead. And what we did was we had to melt the old Babbit because at that point, the old Babbit is wear and tear, oil's been through it, dirt's been through it. So what we do is we melt all the Babbit off of it. And then what we do is we flux it, kind of like the same thing with soldering. Yeah. So what we do is we have to heat this up, and we have an oven, and we heat this up at the same temperature as everything else. Like we put it in the oven, we let it heat up to about 550 degrees.
Yep.
And then once it's all melted, we clean it off. We use like a wire brush. We use an acid brush as well.
Yep.
And what we do is we clean it off, and then as we're doing that, we're also heating up the Babbit. The Babbit's a mix of tin and lead.
Yep.
So what we do is we apply the flux on it, and then we tin it. Yep. And what that does, it adheres to the casting.
Yeah, so basically when you say tin, you're just putting a super light coating
yes.
of the Babbit material.
Yeah. So then what Avery was saying earlier, there's a male mold here, so the Babbit goes around, so you don't fill the whole hole.
It's a mandrel.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So back in the day, what they used to do is they used to use a liner. See, what they used to do is they used to cast it with the cap and the beam together.
Yeah.
But what most people do now is we have a plate, and that plate represents your liner, and then we have a mandrel. It's like a half moon steel.
Yep.
And you put it in between, and you just make it so that the size is about 100th how bigger than your finished size.
So then you can cut it down.
Yes. Okay. So what we do is we pour it in there. Here, I'm trying to get a good angle on it. So you pour it in there and you let it sit for a little bit, and then after we pull it out of the mandrel, and we have a look. And what we have to look for is we have to look for lines, and we have to make sure that the Babbit went over and then go back down. Because the problem is if the Babbit was no good, it didn't adhere to the casting, you'll actually see lines between the casting and the Babbit.
Yep.
And if it's no good,
You may spin a bear. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So then, what's happening now with this? Because a lot of people aren't doing Babbit no more.
Yeah.
We get rods sent to us.
All right. So this is a profitable side.
So somebody will send us rods. We'll machine them all up. They'll tell us the journal size of the crank. We'll machine them, mail the rods back to them.
Yes. There's an old boy that I just went over to his place to buy a buzz box the other day.
Yeah, no problem.
And he's still doing Babbit bearings, and it was fairly interesting. Very few people doing the process. Like very few.
So this is from our Chrysler Model G. I just finished babbing this the other day. This is what it looks like before we bore it out. See right here?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is how much material I have left to come out of it. Now once it's done, it's going to be down to within like maybe 50 thou per side.
Okay, so that's your finished finished tolerance at 20th
and you recut the caps.
And that's like 3/16 or something.
Yeah,
cool.
So again, you just recut the caps and
recut the caps and then
resize it.
Yeah, we just have to be careful when we do that. Make sure it's nice and flat, so that way.
Let me tell you a story back in the day. Before I knew anything, a whole lot. I had a Mini Cooper S I was working on, and I figured I would go back there, and there was some staining on there, and I figured I'd put some sandpaper up there and clean it up. And it only cost me about $400 to fix my problem.
Yeah, a lot of
after I sanded it down.
Some of these old cars here too, we've taken engines apart that I've seen the cap shimmed. For clearance.
Yes, I've seen that too.
You know what? Here, now, let me tell you a funny story about that.
Yep.
If you're working on your old John Deere tractor, that's how they set the clearances on them.
Yeah.
On your caps on a John Deere.
I know.
They will shim the caps on an old John Deere and shim them. And sometimes, if you're running into a wrong clearance on something, they will run two different size shells on them, like a standard and a 5 plow over. Put two different shells on them, and they'll run that on there too.
Yeah. You'll see that, and then as the bearing loosens up, the clearance open up, they'll take a shim out, tighten it back up again. Take a shim out, tighten it back up. The problem is you end up getting oval.
Yeah.